Welcome to the stage, Royce. It's your show, The Bulk Truth. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking. You know, you're like all the folks that you work with. You run a business and you have to answer to investors and stakeholders and customers. And um, the times that you don't feel confident is when you don't have a clear idea of what the answer is because you don't have the data, right? And
That's right.
it's not a good feeling, is it?
No.
All right. So therefore, that's why your mantra is you can't manage what you don't measure. And if you can't measure, you're in the dark. And in the dark doesn't give you confidence. And that's why the bulk truth exists. And so, one of the ways when I was learning about what Kadaro does and the data and the clarity that you provide your customers is one of the dots I connected is like, hey, on the outside of my house, there's a water meter for all the water I get. And I get this bill and I really, you don't contest it, do you? You don't go out and go, hey, I thought I had 42 gallons when you're charging me for 52, right? And so it's clear, and there's a reason why that's there, and then that's why Kadaro exists. There's a similar challenge in these companies that handle all these different various versions of dry bulk materials.
Yeah, it's the water meter. It's taken for granted. I mean, today we're just used to having a way to measure, and it's digital. So the fact that it shows up on your bill and says you consume X number of gallons. I mean, we just people still may want to debate is it correct or not, but the reality is there's a number that can be attributed to what flowed through that meter and what was going through that pipe at any given time. So yes, I mean, really, we make that bridge with what Kadaro is doing with our flow sensors for dry materials. Now there's technology out there that you can actually have attached to a pipe or a chute and know exactly how much grain or plastic pellets or flour or whatever the material might be. If it's dry and it'll flow, we can measure it.
Yeah, and so you guys are providing an expectation where there might not have been one before. Is that you can know with clarity, your team can report correctly, you can make better business decisions, et cetera. These exist. Kind of talk about the various, maybe the top three ways that your existing customers give you feedback on what Kadaro allows them to do.
I think number one is they can measure with confidence. So there's always skepticism as far as being able to use new technology like this and apply it and have confidence that it's truly accurate and it's providing the information that they can take action on. And so that's usually feedback that we receive, and actually generally even in our advertising, that's what grabs people to come see us, because the fact that we advertise plus or minus 1% for accuracy. In many cases, they have no way of measuring. So that's a big step forwards in giving them something that they're willing to invest in to increase their efficiency of their operations.
Um, we've got a little infographic I want to share now. When you look at this, kind of walk us through this, explain it, and why don't you riff? Let's see you do your riff like a rapper.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen too well. So that's why you're here. Yeah. I mean, so we talked about, a water meter, but whatever that utility meter is, and people are generally used to gas meters or water meters. But, thinking about it in Kadaro's flow sensors in a similar light as far as dry bulk materials. So as the materials passing through, we can actually capture that real-time flow rate and weight. And from that, it can be automated into a process or still in a manual process. Turn it on, turn it off, speed it up, slow it down. So that's really simplifying what you have here, but that's generally what we're looking at.
I think about, if I had to go outside of my house every time I wanted to take a shower or do the dishes or whatever, and I had to manually turn the water on, then go in and take the shower or wash the dishes or the laundry or whatever, then go back out and manually turn it off. That would be absurd and ridiculous in that reality, right?
It would. And think of it this way: if you had to stand in the shower with a stopwatch to know how much water you're consuming, because that's really what we're talking about. And with dry bulk materials in today's world, they're using a stopwatch to estimate how much material is flowing through. So next time you're in the shower, take your stopwatch and try to estimate and see how close you get to the meter.
And we're giggling because this example of the weird reality we would find in our house actually exists in an industrial situation.
That's right.
And so there I am in the shower with my clipboard. Right? That's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we got on this visual route.
Well, yeah, don't picture me in the shower, but
Yeah.
but that's the absurd. I mean, that lands because you have these companies that are big name companies with big operations handling massive amounts of bulk dry materials with a lot of things on the line.
Correct.
And that's we're saying that to be absurd, the shower example, but reality, that's what we're dealing with, and that's what you guys are resolving.
That's right. And bottom line is what we're doing is dynamic, right? So we're doing it in real time. So typically, with those operations, they have a way to measure. They're going to use a bulk weigher. They're going to use something that's static, right? But it's usually after the fact. And so having something that creates that visibility in real time that you can actually take an action right then, it makes it somewhat unique as far as what the opportunities could be with that information versus doing something after the fact. Right? You can't correct a problem or can't correct something that you would have chosen to make a change in the process.
Yeah, and then there's the actual data collection. I mean, the big deal in this story is all of a sudden you have analytics and data, and the data is the most valuable piece of asset that you're generating from this activity. So all of a sudden you're having dashboards and all sorts of information that can flow up into other domains of the business or areas of the business to make better business decisions instead of have it gated in an outside little work shed or something until it's finally turned in and brought in and then taken from a handwritten form into a digital form.
Yeah. So sometimes we refer to this as the digital transformation. So that one measurement really transforms the opportunities as far as how you manage and how you optimize your operations to ultimately impact the bottom line, create more margin, and create a competitive advantage in a world that it doesn't exist.
These environments outside, dirty, dusty, they're in various locations, can now be immediately sent back to the home office via certain ways. And you're in the know, you're in the loop. And again, back to where we started with, all of a sudden a level of confidence and clarity exists in the organization.
Sure. And that, the example you gave there, something that comes to my mind is now people, instead of physically being in those environments, are moved to a place that they can actually monitor what's going on. And so you mentioned, it may be the front office, it may be, an on-site office or a control room, but it creates visibility that you can share that with the right people at the right levels at the right time. And from that, you're able to actually hold people accountable, right? You can set standards that, they feel good about being measured from because they're accurate, number one. And then they're, at the end of the day, they know how they performed. How did we do relative to, expectations, or, how did I do versus yesterday? And in some cases it becomes competitive. How did this shift do versus the other shift? Who's really doing the best job and creating the best results.
And so, when we think about the flow path, the measurement point, the dashboard, the control loop, which would those make the obvious first impact? I can assume, but I'm curious what your feedback is, right?
It varies by organization, but generally now that you're measuring, it's not uncommon that there's still a manual process. And so they may be opening and closing something manually or speeding up, slowing down, but they're doing that with a known value. And so they know when to start. So previously they may have put a timer and said, okay, I'm going to start shutting this gate at a certain time. Now they can actually see it counting up and know, when I get to 3,000, that's when I'm going to hit the button. So that's the manual piece. But it's very common that once they become comfortable with what that measurement is, then the next step is, okay, why am I pressing the button? Why does it just do that when it gets to the target? And so that then we move into that automation phase. And then lastly, on those dashboards is then you start creating those KPIs and metrics that, you measure performance from and start, feeding the system as far as, performance overall and how do we measure our success.
What I love about the Cadaro system, you think about, first of all, hey, I've got this cool thing that measures dry milk materials, but then really the higher value is the data, et cetera. I'm curious, give us three scenarios that would give us insight. It's not a one size fits all. It's a thing that can be made bespoke to the use case, right? So give us 3 use cases where you see this really excelling at the moment.
Sure. So inline processing. So being able to measure how much material is moving into a plant, and as it goes through different steps of a process, being able to measure what went into a piece of equipment and what came out to compare the yields and make adjustments in equipment to improve yields. So that'd be one example. We talk a lot about loadouts, whether they be trucks, rail, containers. So when you're loading to a target and you really want to hit that target without going over, because in some cases there's going to be fines associated with overage, and anything that you're under is really just lost freight. And so loadouts are very common as a second example. And then probably lastly is just as you're processing materials, it's not uncommon that you start blending. So you have certain qualities of materials, so you want to optimize margin and revenue. You may be creating a blend of 2 very different qualities to try to hit a optimum spec. And so if you can measure what's flowing in from each of those bins, then you can hit your target to make sure that you're not leaving any money on the table.
And those, when, one example you gave in the past was when you're measuring those blends, a lot of things impact the blend. It can, due to environmental elements, temperatures, moisture, et cetera. And now you can be extremely accurate and confident in that situation as well.
That's correct.
So, all right, been listening to this. I'm excited. I want to talk to Royce. I've got this unique. I'm wondering does this work with rock aggregate?
So if it's dry and it will flow, we can measure it.
Yeah.
So there may be some applications that we haven't explored, and that's not uncommon, that we may want to run a test on new materials or even work on a pilot project with a new customer in a new industry or material. But we're confident as far as our ability to measure and to support various applications.
What's the craziest application you've seen that you didn't expect?
Well, the more recent one has been flower applications. So it handles a little different than grain or seed. So we've learned some things and we've made some slight adjustments in those applications specifically, which is not uncommon because each material is going to handle slightly different. It's been fun to work with industry experts as far as they're experts in their field, they're experts in their materials, and to collaborate with them to find solutions that are going to meet their needs and expectations.
Makes sense about flour. When you go to the store, there's all these different flour grades, so to speak. Or if you get into baking, it's like, oh, I didn't know that there was this kind and it has this output. So that would make total sense why that would be important.
Yeah, it's very different.
All right, Royce, how do I connect with you if I want to talk to you to see about what does it look like? Do you just give me a price and that's it? Or do you come out and evaluate my facility? How does that go?
Usually it starts with just having a conversation. We can do a virtual meeting to understand more as far as the projects or the applications that you want to consider. and explore it from that site. We have a site assessment form that we'll fill out and go through that process. Sometimes we do it just virtually, and then other times we'll go on site. We always go on site for the installs, so that's part of our offer. Is we want to be on site. We want to make sure what the expectations are and that we deliver upon that, and that customers are satisfied with the measurements.
So folks viewing this will see this after the Jeeps conference, but probably tell us a little bit about the Jeeps conference and what that was about, and how are you following up on opportunities from that?
Yeah, so following the Jeeps Exchange, which is that 21st through the 24th, we'll actually be following back up with virtual meetings and insight meetings as well. We've got a few deliveries to be made after that show, which is in Kansas City. And so as we're closer to Michigan and Wisconsin than Texas, so opportunity to not only display some of those units at the show, but make sure that they get to the customers.
So if someone's listening to this and you're in that area, know that Cadaro is going to be visiting some places from that show at that time. So it'd be a good time to get on their, I guess, itinerary, right? And you can go to cadaro.com, or you can call their phone number. It's on the screen here. It's 806-338-7445. LinkedIn, do you respond to LinkedIn, Royce?
I do.
All right. Or you can email Royce at info@cadaro.com. And another little episode of The Bulk Truth, where you learn how you can measure with confidence. You can't manage. And, that's the biggest thing that Cadaro gives folks. It's the confidence, clarity, and success. Any last minute comment before we wrap it up?
No, thanks for putting this together, and look forward to the next session.
All right. You're a natural, Royce. That's a wrap.